Hello everyone, the topic for this video is the primary trigonometric ratios and obtuse angles. To help us learn what we need to learn in this unit, or in this lesson, we're going to look at this chart. Now a couple things about the chart before we actually get using it. The first thing is I was mentioning obtuse angles. So just a quick reminder, obtuse, that's angles greater than 90. So these are bigger than 90 degrees. Okay? And if you check these out over here, these are bigger than 90. The next thing I want to talk about are supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are angles that add together to make 180 degrees. If I highlight these angles here and these angles here, they're going to be supplementary. So we take the first one, 100 degrees. This is saying 180 degrees minus the given angle, which is going to be 100 in this case, which means we're talking about an 80-degree angle for that first row. So 100 and 80, they make 180. That means they're supplementary. So this column and this column, they're going to be supplementary. So the properties that we're going to look at today, they have to do with supplementary angles. So if the angles aren't supplementary, then these properties won't apply. If the two angles add to 180, then these properties will apply. All right, let's actually start now with this chart. So the way we do this chart is in this first one, I want to know what the sine of 100 is. So you get your calculator going and you just hit sine 100, or you hit 100 then sine. It depends on your calculator. You'll have to figure that out. Make sure you're set in degrees, and when you do that, you're going to get a value of 9848, and I'm having to squish that a little bit. Okay. Next would be then cos 100. So you'd hit cos 100, and we got to just type these things out, or we have to determine these values first, and then we can make some comparisons and learn some of these properties. It is going to be negative 0.1736. Tan 100, I'm just going to write in the actual value. Tan 100 is negative 0.56713. All right, now we're going to look at the supplementary partner of it. That was sine 100. Now let's look at sine 80. And when we look at sine 80, then I'm going to get 0.9484. And then I'm going to look at cos 80. And I get decimal 1736. And then tan 5.6713. All right, so I need to complete this chart really to show everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and write in some of these values. By all means, you can pause the video and you can kind of just see if you're going to get that same value too. So I'll go sine 120. Sine 120 is 0.8660. And then cos 120, negative 0.5. Tan 120 is negative 1.7321. Once again, I don't have these memorized. This isn't magic. I'm just calculating with a calculator. I'm typing in tan 120 degrees. This next angle is going to be 120 is 120 minus, 180 minus the 120 that I began with, so it's going to be 60 degrees. So now for these next columns, I'm dealing with 60 degrees. So it's going to be sine 60, just so we're all on the same page. Okay, and sine 60 ends up being decimal 8660. And then cos 60 ends up being 0.5. And then tan 60, 1.7321. Keep going here. Tan 140, 0.6428. Cos 140, negative 0.7660. Tan 140, negative 0.8391. Then, for my next angle, my supplementary angle is going to be 180 minus 140. 180 minus 140. So these are 40-degree angles that I'm comparing them to. So sine of 40, 0.6428. Then I have 0.7660, that's cos 40. Tan 40, 0.8391. And then finally, our final row here, sine 160. Oops, I deselected my pen here. 0.3420. Then negative 0.9397. And then negative 0.3640. Now I calculate my supplementary angle partner. 180 minus 160 equals 20. So sine 20, 0.3420. Then cos 20, 0.9397. And then this is tan 20, 3640. All right, so that took a little while, but it wasn't hard. Now we want to do some comparisons. By all means, again, feel free to pause the video, look at these things for yourself, but hopefully certain things start to kind of pop out. The first thing that you should notice is that sine of 100 seems to have the same value of sine of 180. And then sine of 120 seems to go with sine of 60. And it keeps going. So like the sine values, no matter what they are, what the angle size, they seem to be equal. So over here, these were obtuse angles, larger than 90. Here, I guess I should say here, they ended up being acute. But they still had the exact same value. Now that's kind of interesting, I guess, but it also poses a problem. Meaning that if I do a calculation and I get a value of 0.9484, I don't know, is that sine 80 or is that an 80-degree angle or is that a 100-degree angle? So there's a bit of a problem with that, and as we move forward in the unit, we can talk about that. So first thing to take away is that the sine of some angle is going to be equal to the supplementary partner of that angle. So sine of theta will be equal to sine 180 minus theta. So if I write that out, if I said sine 100, it's going to be equal then to the sine of 180 minus 100, which ends up being 80. So sine 100 is equal to sine 80, and we've got proof of that in that first row in our column. So that's the first thing to take away. And to be honest, that's the main thing I want you to take away from this. But there are a couple other things. You may notice that with cosine, the values are not the same, they're not equal, but they're opposites. Opposites. So we have the same numerical value, I guess you could say, but with opposite signs. So like cos 100 is negative 0.1736, where cos 80 is positive 0.1736. Now, we can write that out too. I'll use purple again. So if I have cos theta, it's going to be equal to the negative value of its supplementary partner. And I'll show you what that means. Don't worry. I know sometimes these forms, these mathematical expressions look kind of complicated until you actually put some numbers in there. So if I say cos 100 would be equal to then the value of negative cos 180 minus 100. So cos 100 is equal to negative cos 80. Now that still might not make sense. Well, what's the value of cos 100 again? Well, the value of cos 100 is 0.1736. Negative, right? That's part, we can check out the chart. And then this, the right side is negative cos 80. So I'm just going to put the negative sign down, and then the cos 80 is 0.1736. And you can see by putting in that extra negative sign, it balances out your equation. So basically, if you have an acute angle, you times your obtuse angle by negative, they're going to equal out. If you have an obtuse angle, multiply your acute by negative, then they'll balance out. The third thing that we want to look at, I'll choose orange, is now our tan, and they're the exact same relationship as we have with cosine, where the obtuse have negative values while the acute have positive values, but they're not equal there. Once again, opposite. So you have negative 5.6713 compared to positive 5.6713. So we have the same deal here, that tan theta is equal to the negative, times the tan value of its supplementary partner. I'll see if I can squeeze that in. So if I take tan 120, I'd compare that to negative tan. 100A minus 120 is 60. And the value of tan 120, if I check my chart right here, negative 1.7321 is equal to the negative times the value of tan 60. Tan 60 ends up being right here, and that's the positive version there. So by having that negative in there, I can make them equal to each other. You see they both have negative signs, so it's negative equals a negative. All right, so there's our chart. Once again, the big thing to take away though is that when you have when you're dealing with the sine ratio, the acute and the obtuse supplementary partners, they're going to give you the same value. So you're not sure if I have a value of 0.8660, am I talking about a 120 degree angle, or am I talking about a 60 degree angle? That's all we really have to take away from this. All right, let's do a quick example before I let you guys go to kind of, make sure this kind of sticks in the head. So let's calculate the ratio to 4 decimal places. So we're going to calculate these ratios to 4 decimal places. Then we'll predict another angle that will have an equal or opposite trig value. So if I give you sine 25, okay, the first part is actually calculated. So again, get out your calculator. You have to write, you just hit the sine button, sine 25, or depending on the calculator, you might go 25 then sine. Once again, make sure you're in degrees. So the value here ends up being 0.4226. Now the next one is we need to predict, the next part, whether we can find an angle that'll have an equal or opposite value. Well, remember sine, the obtuse and the acute supplementary partners, they're always equal to each other. So what I'm trying to say is that, first of all, I'm going to find an equal relationship, and sine 25 is going to be equal to the value of sine 180 minus 25. So sine 25 is going to have the same value as sine 155. So I'm predicting this sine 155 will give me an equal value. Let's try B. So for B, we'll say cos 70. All right, again, first thing we want to do is actually calculate it. So cos 70, or 70 cos, 0.3420. Second thing, well, with cosine, we know that we can have an opposite value. Not an equal value, but an opposite value. So this question here starts off with an acute angle. So I know that the obtuse angle in the supplementary partnership that we have, you know that these two angles have to add to 180. I know that the obtuse angle is going to have an opposite value. So we can display that though. We can kind of write this out. Cos 70 is equal to negative cos 180 minus 70. And I got that from our previous slide. So cos 70 is equal then to negative cos 110. Perfect. C, tan 105. And before I get into tan 105, I guess I should clarify something with B. So then I know that cos 110 would be my answer, not negative cos 110, but cos 110 would give me an opposite value. If I multiplied that cos 110 by a negative, that would make it equal. Sorry, I just kind of thought of that as I started C. So now back to C, the first thing I have to do is calculate. So tan negative 3.7321. Again, I'm not memorizing that. That's not mathemagic. That is me just using a calculator. Next part, we'll look at, well, again, sine, we always know that we can find something equal to sine, but for cos and tan, they're going to be opposites. So I know it's going to be opposite right away. I can use my relationship if I wanted to find it. that I've done here in the cosine question. But once you've done it a few times, you just know, okay, well, whatever the supplementary angle for 105 would be. So that'd be 75. So I know that tan 75 will end up giving me that. Will end up giving me an opposite value. And if you check it out, it does. It's going to give you 3.7321. Perfect. So that brings this video to an end. Again, the main focus of this video was that sine property, where that a value, just depending on the sine value, you don't know if it's an acute angle or an obtuse angle. You're going to have to look into it a little bit more. All right, I hope that helped everybody. Have a great night.